Well, the testimony in Donald Trump's New York criminal trial starts back up tomorrow. Court will not be in session today. The judge in the case is weighing whether Donald Trump violated his gag order with his social media posts. And there was a hearing yesterday, but there wasn't an immediate ruling. Later in the day, though, the former publisher of the National Enquirer returned to the stand. David Pecker detailed a plan to suppress negative stories about the former president in the lead up to the 2016 election. So Katrina Kaufman is here with me in Studio 57 to discuss. She's a CBS News campaign reporter, also an attorney who's been following the trial in Manhattan. Good to see you indoors.
Good morning.
I guess we get the pleasure of having you here every Wednesday because Wednesdays are sort of day off for court. You were in the courtroom yesterday, though, during the discussions about this gag order. How did the hearing go? What sort of response did we get from Trump and his attorneys?
Yeah, well, Trump afterwards said that, of course, he thinks that this gag order is unconstitutional. It's restricting his speech. He said to the reporters, there are all these things I want to say to you, and I can't. But the reality is this is a limited gag order. It just protects the witnesses, the jurors, the court staff in this case. And their argument during the gag order hearing was that in a lot of these cases, they say Trump was reposting what other people said. And they claim that that technically doesn't violate the gag order. And the judge said, you know, he wanted to really hear their case. You could tell he said, show me the case law that supports this. And Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, said, I don't have any case law. It's just common sense. And the judge at one point just said, you've presented me with nothing. And it was very contentious. It got very heated between them, I would say.
Yeah.
And towards the end, Trump's attorney tried to say, you know, we're doing everything we can to comply with the order. President Trump, as he calls him still, is doing everything he can to comply with the order. And the judge just kind of lost it. And he said, Mr. Blanche, Trump's attorney, you are losing credibility in this courtroom, which is not what you want very early on in this type of case.
Definitely not. Later on, though, we get David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer. He's back on the stand. He is a Trump ally. They've had a long relationship, they call it catch and kill, right, of paying to suppress negative stories about Donald Trump, even before the election. What did we learn from him?
Yeah, well, for one, we really learned about the history of their relationship. They've known each other since the late 80s. They even had a magazine that Pecker had pitched to Trump called Trump Style at one point. And you can really tell, even though he was testifying against Trump, he seems to idolize him in a lot of ways. You know, he talked about him as such an eligible bachelor who got all these beautiful women. And he knew that stories would come forward when Trump was running for president. And there was a lot of warmth towards him almost, which was interesting given the testimony. But really, we gained a lot of insight into the coordinated scheme between Trump, David Pecker, and Michael Cohen, starting with this meeting in the summer of 2015, where they decided to catch and kill these stories that might come out, but also to put out positive stories about Trump and negative stories about his political opponents. In particular, they talked about Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, how there were discussions with Cohen and Pecker, and they put out stories that were basically smear campaigns as they were doing well in the polls. And we also gained more insight into the catch and kill schemes, the one involving the former Trump Tower doorman. But even more interestingly, we left off in the middle of the story of Karen McDougal.
Right. She's
the former Playboy model who said she had an affair with Trump. And apparently, when that story came to light, the National Enquirer started looking into it. And Michael Cohen and David Pecker were talking a lot during this period. But he also detailed a conversation he had directly with Trump. And that is significant because it shows Trump's direct involvement in this as well. And he said that Trump called him and asked David Pecker what he thought he should do about the Karen McDougal story. And David Pecker told him to buy it, you know, that Trump himself should purchase this story. And Trump, very interestingly, said, I don't buy stories. Things like this always come out, something to that effect. And it felt so ironic sitting in that courtroom because, of course, these stories did come out.
Yes.
Now we're sitting in this trial. They're at the center of this case.
They were bought and they did come out.
Yes, he was right.
That's fascinating, Katrina. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emery.